everyone, welcome back. I just wanted to do a little bit of a quick review today, but I had a book that kind of took me by storm, and I wanted to talk about it because it's been a little while since I've read anything that was like, yes, this was amazing, I needed to read it in one day kind of a read. So that's what we have today, and today's book is called The Forgotten Memories of Vera. I'd actually checked this book out a little while ago. It was actually coming due and I wouldn't have been able to renew it, all that kind of stuff. And I had a few other books along with it that I'd gotten around the same time that were in kind of the same boat, and I hadn't started any of them. So I was like, all right, we'll do like a reading the first chapter and see if I'm gonna actually like make the time to read any of these before their due date kind of a deal. And we get to The Forgotten Memories of Vera after a few other ones that I was not quite jiving with. I was like, well, maybe I'd read it, but I don't know if I need to rush into reading it right now, and maybe we'll check it out at a different time. But we got to The Forgotten Memories of Vera, and I had a completely opposite reaction. The general premise of this book, or like the inciting incident of it, we're starting out with Vera and her siblings. They're home waiting for their parents to get home. They're talking about making dinner, all this kind of everyday stuff. And then all of a sudden, there's this moment where her older brother disappears. They don't remember that he ever existed, but at the same time, they have these empty feelings like they're missing something, and they don't know what they're missing. And like, this is all chapter 1, and I was like, oh, I'm here. This concept is fascinating. I need to follow this through and see where it goes. It's amazing. I love it. Just for the concept, it's really fun. But multiple people end up kind of disappearing this way. And the transitions every time are so smooth and so perfect. If you hadn't have just been like reading about these characters existing in Vera's life, you yourself would maybe even miss that the difference that happened, other than there's like these triggering elements, like with her brother, they're specifically like making a spaghetti dinner for their family to eat. And so then when spaghetti comes up later in the story as a meal that her mom's like, we're just gonna have some spaghetti tonight, you know, it wakes up those feelings that are like this big clawing emptiness, and she doesn't know why. And there are all kinds of triggers and things like that. So you're trying to figure out this mystery of what's going on that way. And then it's also a really fun concept as well. It's a magical realism type story. So every character has what's called an affinity, which is like a minor magical power that they have and can use in their everyday lives. Vera's power is of unlocking. There's an affinity for light. So her friend Riven will like turn on and off lights with hers without having to like flip a light switch, that kind of a thing. So there's all kinds of little powers like that that go throughout this world. So the magical realism world building that way I thought was really fun and different and unique. I really liked that. But yeah, this was a really amazing read. I couldn't put it down. I just wanted to keep reading and find out what happened. I read it in a single day, which, as I said, I have not done in a while. So having a book that did that for me was very fun and very exciting. Yeah, and I want to jump slightly into some spoilery things because I had some predictions going on throughout the story that I think might be fun to talk about as well. So first off, I've mentioned already Vera has this best friend named Riven, and these people start disappearing, and I was like, oh no, her best friend Riven's going to be one of them that disappears, isn't she? Which is maybe kind of just a predictable storyline or whatever. But I was thinking that like early in the book. It's like, oh no, her best friend is going to disappear. What's going to happen when her best friend disappears? But then as the story progresses and the way that Riven gets integrated into them trying to solve the mystery and things, I was like, oh, Riven's going to stick around. And I kind of forgot about Riven disappearing. But no, Riven ended up disappearing. And I was like, no, not Riven. Not now that we've built up all of this going on. How are we going to recover from this? And yeah, so that one thing was masterfully done, because like I said, I was suspecting it early on, and then as things built up, I was like, oh, how could you possibly get rid of her character if we're going to be like solving this thing? And then she disappeared anyways. It was great. It was a great moment to be like, oh, this thing that I called and then forgot about ended up happening. It was great. I loved that moment. Additionally in the story, we have this other girl that Vera is a lab partner with in school named Sarah, and she's kind of this oddball, introspective, a little bit of like a loner kind of character. And Vera is always like, I wonder if she has any friends kind of thread throughout the story. And so as things are happening, I'm like, oh, somehow it's going to be Sarah causing all the people disappearing. And I was very confident in that. She seemed to have this like attachment to Vera, so I was like, oh, she's going to be the villain because she's been trying to get close to Vera, and then Vera's other friends kind of interfere with how she wants it, because she wants to just like glom and latch on to Vera, and it just be like her and Vera being like the best friends and being the higher up relationship, and then the other people more like an acquaintance that you'll hang out with, but they're not the end all be all kind of friendship. So I thought that's what was going on with it. And no, as I said, I am getting into spoilers, and apologies if you didn't want that, but I did try to warn you. But Sarah is involved in why people are disappearing, but it was not malicious like I was picturing. And so the way that played out, that dynamic and how that ended up changing and shifting through the story, for how it was played out instead of it being a malicious intent, was fascinating. The themes that the story then can go into as well, because Sarah has this like forgetting affinity, and that's why people are disappearing, is because she's trying to forget them, and that makes them disappear from the world. So that plays into like how grief and pain shape us, and how, yes, in some ways it might be nice to like numb yourself from pain or do your best to avoid painful interactions and things. But then at the same time, how without the pain shaping who you become, what do you become? And I loved the way that was addressed and handled, and it was a fascinating discussion to think about, that like, yes, none of us like having painful moments, but look at where we grow from because we have these painful moments, versus her just being like, I know that these bad things happen, but I've forgotten them. And so how her character stays so much more static in comparison to how people who have felt and experienced pain will grow and progress through a story. It was fascinating. I loved it. I highly recommend this book. Please go read it. It was great. Sorry that I just spoiled a bunch of it too. But I know sometimes spoilers help you decide if you really want to read a book or not too. I know sometimes I'm hesitant about a story, and so I actually will seek out spoilers to see if, based on the spoilers, it is a plot line that I want to get into and stuff. So maybe that'll be something for someone too. But anyways, please go read this book. It was great. It was fascinating. I loved it. I want to have discussions about it with people, all that kind of stuff. Feel free to comment your thoughts down below if you happen to have read it or want to read it, and that kind of thing. If you have any recommendations of things you might think might be similar, or of general interest based on kind of what I've given you for this story, feel free to share down below. I think that's all I've got for now. This is the Umlaut Herper signing out.